For the next 100 days, I'm going to be stranded in the middle of the ocean on this deserted island, surviving through the toughest conditions, rain, hail, and shine. How much can I achieve with the limited amount of resources? Well, you're about to find out. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Well, this is a very interesting place. Looks like there's an ocean ruin or something out there, but ignoring that, I went ahead and started chopping down a tree for some wood. I then got a crafting table and a wooden pickaxe, and then I collected some stone so I could upgrade my pickaxe and craft a stone axe and sword as well. Heading over to the jungle biome on this island, I collected some bamboo and cocoa beans, replanting it as well, so I can get even more of it later. I then went ahead and collected some spruce wood because for some reason I was already in a building mood, and I then went ahead and started building up a bridge connecting two islands together. And not too long later, I actually had my first encounter with an enemy. A phantom spawned. I also started defeating some animals on this island for food, and then I went around collecting some coal so I could cook that food up. And for the rest of the night, I went around defeating more animals and mobs that would spawn on this island. Now, day 2, I began by planting some of the seeds that I collected by breaking all the grass. Hey, get out of here. But now that I've got a farm, I'm going to put these wood doors to use, and I'm going to go around on the side of the island and collect every bit of ore that I can find, starting with this iron right here. Doing a bit of exploration down there as well, I found an amethyst geode, which was cool. Maybe I could do a build with the amethyst blocks later. I also found a cave, but I had started drowning. Luckily for me though, I had a door with me. But further down this cave, I found a skeleton spawner, which I almost died looking at. Oh my god. Unfortunately, the chest had nothing inside, so I collected them for storage later. I then collected some more iron and then returned to the surface of this island where I found a sheep. I ended up dyeing the sheep because I thought I would eventually have to craft more wool using the string to get a bed, but after collecting some more food, smelting iron, and crafting up shears, I sheared the sheep and got 3 wool from it. I guess I didn't need to dye that sheep after all. And after a good night's rest, I collected loads of dirt until my shovel broke. So I had to go craft up another and go back to collecting even more dirt. And there was a reason for this, which you're going to find out about very soon. But first, I put all the iron that I collected yesterday to use. I crafted up full iron armor, iron tools, and a bucket as well. I then went around and collected even more spruce wood, fixed that bridge that I started building a couple days ago, and then I collected more coal before spawn proofing that big hole that I dug out whilst collecting all the dirt. I started day 4 off by eating. I'm a hungry man. And whilst running around on the island, oh my gosh, what the heck? Hey. Off my island. Okay, so using all that dirt that I had collected, I now wanted to start expanding out the island even further, because if I was going to start doing some cool builds and stuff later, I would probably need more space on this island. Obviously though, I ran out of dirt, so I had to go ahead and collect even more, and then I ran out of that pretty quickly too. Remember those ocean ruins that I saw the other day? Yeah, well, today I was going to be going out and exploring those. But first, I crafted up a boat and a shield just to stay safe from any potential monsters lurking around, but turns out I didn't need that shield. I went around these ruins looting all the chests and got a fishing rod, some wheat, coal, and some other stuff as well. And since I didn't want to gather any more dirt today, I decided that I was going to turn that skeleton spawner that I saw the other day into a mob grinder. From this, I would be able to get XP and bones, which are both pretty important items. Eventually though, my pickaxe broke. Uh-oh. So I had to get another one. And then I finally finished off the skeleton spawner grinder thingo. Yes, boom, next day. I went back to collecting more dirt and extending out that island platform, and I finally finished that off by day 7. And since I now had a pretty large island platform, I could actually start working on a house. However, for that, I would need to get a whole lot more materials, since this wasn't going to be any pathetic small house. So for this day, I went around gathering materials, also using the skeleton grinder as well to gather bones for bone meal, to grow trees, and get even more wood. And now it's time to build up the house, which definitely does end up taking a little bit of time to complete. However, in the end, I think it looks quite nice, which you're going to end up seeing very soon. I started building the front of the house, and from what you can gather during these building clips, I was going to be using a mix between spruce wood, birch wood, stone bricks, and cobblestone to build up this house, which is convenient for me because I have easy access to all those materials. The front of this house is definitely the most time-consuming part, as there are so many smaller details that are kind of hard to build in survival mode. But I continued, finishing that into day 10, which I could then move on to building up the other walls, which unfortunately right now, I couldn't actually strip the logs since my axe broke. On this day as well, I went ahead and added some white stained panes onto the walls for windows, and after using a bunch of stone bricks on the roof, I started to realize that I was going to need quite a lot more stone if I wanted to finish this house off anytime soon. But that's for later me to deal with, because right now, my focus was on finishing the back wall. Though I couldn't actually fully complete this since I ran out of materials, so I had to go around collecting even more wood. This is a pretty common reoccurring theme that is displayed throughout this building section. I would start building and then I would run out of materials, so I would have to go and collect even more. In this case, today I needed spruce wood, and I was going to need this so I could build up the floor inside the house. Oh yeah, I also needed to collect some stone as well, because your boy needed to finish this roof off. The floor was getting wet. It was raining through the roof that was non-existent right now. And well, whilst I waited for all the stone to cook up, I would use some of it to go ahead and start adding more blocks to the roof. I also added random details like a staircase inside the house, and finally, I finished off the house roof today. It was also during this time, I decided to move that wheat farm that I currently had onto the side of the house, as I thought this would be a cool way to add more details to the area. And now, it was time to mostly finish off the house. And I was missing one feature, but first, I needed more stone to complete this. I was going to be building up a chimney on the side of this house. That's all. It was nothing too crazy, but I think it would definitely make the outside look a whole lot better. I then added some leaves to the outside of the house, and that pretty much completes this house build. This is how it turned out. I think it looks pretty good. And if you think that building theme was over, then you'd be heavily mistaken, because I was going to be going straight into building up some animal farms. I was going to build a total of 3 animal farms, and each one took me about 1 day to complete, so this was going to be another few more days worth of building. I also don't really know what style I was going for here. I was kind of just in a super flat creative world building up random stuff, and eventually came up with this design. It's good enough, and I think it definitely makes the island look a whole lot better. Now, before I actually did anything else, I wanted to add something else to my main house, and this was going to be a second floor. To do this, I was going to need to bone meal some spruce trees for wood, and then I would use all the wood that I got from the trees to make the upstairs floor in my house. Anyways, I now want diamond armor, so I started digging down a staircase, and eventually I stumbled across a cave. So I went down and got rid of a stupid creeper, mined up some iron, coal, and wait for it, diamonds as well. Oh yeah. So for the rest of the day, I just went around mining up a ton of different ores. Yep, that's it. Well, it's now time to go and mine up some more diamonds. And, well, for that, I was going to need to go deeper into the cave. So I started mining down another staircase, and my pickaxe was getting fairly low on durability, so I went ahead and crafted up a diamond one. And not too long later, I found myself in a massive cave. So I could go around fighting off loads of mobs, and eventually I crafted up a new diamond axe so I could fight off some more mobs. But putting that aside, it was now time to go around and mine up loads of diamonds, and over these few days I ran around the caves and collected around 37 diamonds in total, which is enough for full diamond armor and tools. However, I couldn't just leave the caves just yet, because I needed to collect a few other materials, starting with 14 obsidian from the giant lava pool. This would be used for an enchant table and a nether portal, and then I also mined up an entire amethyst geode because I thought these blocks would be a great use in future builds that I would do. Anyways, it was now time to return back home. That was a pretty successful mining trip. It's officially time to put those diamonds to use. I crafted up full diamond armor and tools, and this is when I realized I needed some sugarcane for books to craft up an enchant table. And I just don't have sugarcane on this island, so I went out exploring on a boat to see if I could find a tiny floating island or something that would have sugarcane on top. However, instead of finding that, I found a shipwreck which had paper in a chest. This was perfect, as it was all I really needed. I obviously got some other loot, and then looted a second shipwreck, which meant I could finally go back home and craft up an enchant table. I could then enchant all my diamond stuff. I then put the other obsidian to use, building up a nether portal, ending the day off by building up another wheat farm. Although I just built up the portal, I now wanted to move it over a few blocks because it kind of looked a little strange where it was right now. And for the rest of the day, I just started collecting a ton of of materials because I was about to build another house on this island. Of course, I was going to be using the same general materials for this build, though this house was going to be a different design to the first one that I built up. And for some reason, this one was going to take quite a while to build up. I started by building up the frame of this house, building up all the spruce pillars. I could then move on to building up the front of the house, then the sides, straight onto the back of the house, and you get the point. I was building this house up, building all the walls, the roof, and everything else until it was finally complete. Honestly, I think the most time-consuming part of this was actually building the floor inside, because I had to keep going back and forwards from the spruce trees to gather more wood for the floor. And just like that, this island now has 2 houses. But there is definitely more to come very soon. However, before I would even consider building up any more houses, I was going to build up a mob grinder because I wanted to get some villagers, and I thought the only way of me getting villagers right now was to get zombie villagers from a grinder and then cure them. Yeah, you get the point. So I was going to spend a couple of days actually putting that dark oak island to use. You've probably seen this farm being built in a bunch of YouTube videos before. It's probably one of the more older mob farms in the game, and it is good because you don't need any redstone for this farm to actually work, and it's quite simple. I didn't even have to watch a tutorial to build this. But putting that aside, it was now time for another adventure. It was time to put the nether portal to use. However, before I would even do any of that, I needed to do some preparations, such as farming for food. But it was now time for me to go into the nether. And entering in, I was spawned into a warped forest biome, where I realized I could get ender pearls. And this is important because that means I could fight the ender dragon later on in this video. I ran around defeating some endermen for a while, gathering a couple of ender pearls, but then I was interrupted by running into the nether fortress. That's some pretty crazy luck. So on top of me getting a few ender pearls really quickly, I was now able to gather up some blaze rods as well, which is the other material I would need to get Eyes of Ender to find the stronghold. So yeah, I spent a little while collecting a total of 12 blaze rods, which then meant I could move on to doing other things. I wanted to go around the nether fortress to loot some chests, because maybe I could get some cool extra loot. However, that was a fail, that I couldn't find any chests. So instead, I just went back to collecting more ender pearls, because I would need a few of them at least, and I kept doing this until I had a total of 16 ender pearls, which meant I could leave the nether and return back home, so I could go and collect more building materials. And on top of that, to prepare myself for another build that I was going to add to this island, I started expanding out this deserted island with some more dirt. Yep, a bigger island. So what I was about to build was another building, obviously, but this building will be used as my enchanting room. Obviously, I was going to spend a few days building up this actual structure again, also using the exact same materials as all the other buildings. And then once I finished actually building up the structure, I could move on to designing the interior. Obviously, this wouldn't be anything too crazy because of the limited materials that I had, but the main decorations I would add in here would be an amethyst roof, as I thought that would look cool, and I also added some random chandelier made with lanterns. But it's a good thing that the interior is now complete, because that means I could go out and start looting shipwrecks for one specific item. Well, I guess technically 2, books and paper, but there was also something else I realized. See those mountains there? Yeah, they're not supposed to be there. This is supposed to be an ocean-only world. However, since I upgraded my game version to 1.21, the world's kind of corrupted. So we now have land, I guess, but I won't be touching anything on those islands because that kind of defeats the whole deserted island idea. But putting that aside, I looted a bunch of shipwreck chests as well as ruined portal chests. And eventually, I returned back home so I could do some pretty crazy things. I was now going to be taking terraforming to a whole new level. I guess I did just say I wouldn't touch those mountains that were randomly generated, but gathering dirt from those would be so much easier. Anyways, now I wanted to expand out the island further, but in a different way that I have not done yet. I was going to start by using loads of stone to build up stone walls as a way to elevate this land a little bit. This was going to take a couple days to complete, but once it would inevitably be completed, it would make this island look a whole lot cooler. See what I mean? The terraforming isn't complete just yet though. I was going to go back to the Dark Oak Island and start removing that mob grinder that I just built up the other day. It wasn't efficient enough to be used, and it looked pretty ugly, so I just decided to get rid of it. I then flattened the island out and started terraforming that part as well, using the stone again to build it up. Obviously, this took a couple days as well to complete. I just added the dirt on top, and then boom, we had another terraformed bit of land. And after building a cool cave entrance to my mine staircase, I realized there was no easy way for me to get up and down that bit of land that I just terraformed on the Dark Oak Island. So I built up a staircase using spruce wood to obviously fit in with the bridge that I built on the first day. And well, now it is time for yet another structure to be built on this island. You see, in most of these 100 days on the deserted island videos, the people build lighthouses, and I wasn't going to do that. I was going to change things up and build something that has like a windmill on it. Wait, now that I think about it, all those videos also build windmills. Let's just ignore that. So I spent a few days building this up. I also wanted to make a pretty big wheat farm because wheat farms look cool. Yep, I guess I can also use it for food at some point too. Aside from that, I went back to building up the windmill thing, which was going to take a lot longer than I thought, since I would have to go back and forth to the sheep farm, shearing them for wool as well. But eventually, it was complete, and it looked pretty cool. I reckon this was definitely a good addition to this island. I also moved the nether portal into the stone walls on the island that I just terraformed. I then surrounded it using some amethyst blocks as well, and it looked really cool in my opinion. It was definitely worth moving the portal here. I did some farming, used some bone meal to add grass for decorations, and a wandering trader spawned here as well, which I decided to use some of my emeralds from the shipwrecks to trade for one cactus. Well, now it's time to prepare for the end fight. I first started by spending a day AFK at the skeleton spawner because I wanted arrows, but this ended up being pretty useless. I didn't get a whole lot from doing this. So to make up for that wasted time, I crafted a bow and enchanted it in my new enchanting room. I then crafted up a few eyes of ender and then started exploring around for the stronghold, throwing a few eyes and apparently, you know, just casually running on land during a deserted island video. Just ignore that. Eventually, I found the stronghold, so I dug down and pretty much instantly found the portal room. It was also around this time that I had the idea to look for a library for the books, as that would mean I wouldn't have to worry about not having sugarcane or leather. It's now time for the end fight. I chucked a couple of eyes into the end portal and jumped through. This was it. It was time for me to battle the Ender Dragon. I dug up to the surface and started shooting out all the pillars with my bow. Eventually, I started pillaring up a tower using some blocks and started shooting the crystals from on top, as it would be much easier for me to hit the crystals from up here. Soon, I broke the final crystal, and now it was time for me to defeat the Ender Dragon. I hit it a few times with my bow, and then it started to perch, so I hit it with my sword, and then I continued using my bow. Not too long later, it perched down one final time, where I got it extremely low on health, and then I finally took the last shots with my bow. And just like that, I defeated the Ender Dragon. So now I could go ahead, collect all the XP, as well as the dragon egg, and then pillar up, followed by throwing an ender pearl through the end gateway. Because now, I'm going to be looking for end cities for an elytra. I did instantly find an end city, however, it didn't have a ship. I did go inside the end city and got to loot a chest, but aside from that, I left this end city and spent quite a long time running around until I eventually found another end city, which meant I could go to the end ship, destroy the shulker defending the chest and the elytra, take the elytra, and then loot the other chest for some more stuff. I also noticed another end city with a ship off in the distance, and I was going to fly over there using my elytra, but damn, that was close. So I ended up running over to the end city. I looted a few chests and then got my hands on a second elytra, meaning I could finally go back home. And now that I was back at home, I could go back to building some cool things. Next on my bucket list was to build up another big tower. This one was going to be a fairly big wizard tower, and it was also going to take a while to build considering how many materials I would actually need to build this thing up. But in the end, it would definitely look pretty awesome. The main part of this tower was going to be built built using 3 different wood types: stripped birch, oak, and spruce logs in a gradient sort of pattern. And then the roof would be made out of stone bricks, and on top of all of that, it would then be decorated using some leaves and amethyst blocks. This was a pretty cool build, and this entirely new built terrain area was going to be decorated with even more structures. It started off with the wizard tower, and now I'm going to be copying the enchanting room building here as well. The exact same structure design, but obviously without the enchant table as the interior, since I don't need a second enchanting room. Actually, speaking of interior, something that I did only really just notice is that most of the houses that I've built on this island, it's still yet to have an interior. Maybe if I do 200 days on this island, that's something else I could do. Let me know. Should I do 200 days? And combined with the newly built wizard tower and the house, I then went ahead and built up some shopping stall looking things. I built a total of 3 of these, and each one had a different color: blue, red, and yellow. And continuing to make this island look good, I went ahead and chopped down everything on the jungle island. And then using some leftover stone and dirt, I went ahead and terraformed a part of this island too. Since I was getting to the final stretch of these 100 days, I really wanted to make sure this island could look as good as possible. On top of this terraformed land, I was going to build another one of those shopping stalls. And whilst I was building this shopping stall, I had another idea. I think something cool that I could do is, when I eventually get villages in the future, I could potentially put one in each of the stalls, which I guess would mean these would officially be classified as shopping stalls. I then built up a small house, which would add more structures to this part of the island, and since it was a small and very simple house, it wouldn't actually take me too long to build this up. This was obviously followed by another house build, which I just ended up copying the enchanting building again. Every time I went to try build this house, it's taken me about 4 or so days to complete, but since I've built it a few times already, I could quite easily cut this time down because I knew exactly what I was doing. And it actually only ended up taking me about 2 days to complete this. And that pretty much sums up everything I was going to be doing on this jungle island. Pathways. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I was just finishing off all the pathways leading and connecting to everything on this island. Oh, also, I made a water fountain. Why? I don't know. I thought it'd be cool or something. And then I spent a few days farming and collecting dirt so I could add even more random hills and layers onto this island so it wasn't so flat. It was also around this time that I remembered I had books in my chest from the stronghold. So I just went ahead and crafted up some bookshelves and added that to the enchanting room in order to make a level 30 enchant table. Apart from that, I made a ton of wheat farms because once they grow on this island, it was going to look pretty cool. It adds more color to the place and it looks awesome. And well, I started day 100 with one goal in mind, and that was to get better armor and tools since I had loads of XP from the dragon fight. I started by crafting up a new diamond pickaxe and diamond boots, then followed by crafting up a grindstone so I could remove all the enchants from all the gear and stuff that I had. I then went to the enchanting room to enchant all the armor and tools. I also put new armor trims on all of it. I probably could have done all of this way sooner, but oh well. On top of all that, whilst I was looking at all the things that I built on this island, I noticed a wandering trader on top of one of my houses. So I had some fun with the llamas. Anyways, as the sun started to set, that was 100 days on a deserted island in Minecraft Hardcore. Again, if you want to play on this map for yourself, I'll be leaving a download link in my Discord. Also, make sure to subscribe. Anyways, I'll see you all next time.